Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by BETSPERTS.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. Andy, you ready to talk a little football?
JETS. You know what? Of all the people we regularly talk to on Twitter, of all the regulars in all our chats and all the Slacks and Twitters and Telegrams and everything we've ever been, we know a lot of Jets fans. We kind of, maybe, I don't know, we should take a straw poll of that. I think I know a bunch of Cowboy fans too. And obviously I know there's a lot of Chicago Bears fans over at BETSPERTS because they're all from fucking Chicago, but there are a lot of Jets fans. And, you know, these people, we have to be in chats with them and talk to them and kind of talk them down over the past couple of years. Like it's been rough. And this was, you know, it's not like it's been decades of incompetence. This is a team that was in the AFC title game a couple of years in a row. And then it went to the, you know, then we go butt fumble, then we go this,
Sanchez era.
Then we get, you know, problems with coaching, problems with quarterback, problems with everything. The leadership takes a ambassadorship role. The coaching goes, and yeah, we're at where we're at. It was a 2-14 team.
You're right.
It was rough.
You're right. We know a lot of Jets fans. Our buddy Suma's a Jets guy. We have a friend that used to work for the Jets selling tickets.
Yes.
There are a lot of Jets connections in our crew. A number of guests that we've had on the pod have been Jets guys. So it's a weird small world. I guess I don't have any specific affinity for the Jets. I kind of been wallowing in their misery.
Yeah, no, like I feel for the people that cheer them on because it's especially like last year. And I mean, let's just dive into last year. I mean, the first things they did was, I mean, the entire goal of last year, get better because it was a rough year and especially in the offensive side. But they, you know, first thing off, we have clashes with Jamal Adams. So he's gone, which didn't turn out to be the worst trade in the world from a player for value standpoint, but he's also a good player to have on your team when you're trying to save your job. A draft pick for the next year doesn't help you save your job, as we will shortly see. And then, you know, if you do that thing in 2011, or excuse me, 2021, 20, when you want to jumpstart your offense, you go get a Le'Veon Bell. The ultimate case study in sitting out a year did not help. And running backs age like the fucking people on that M. Night Shyamalan movie. Like all of a sudden, Le'Veon Bell comes back from the cliff and he's like 70 years old on the beach. And that's that. And we saw what the season was a punchline. It was kind of a joke. Like the joke that got to go running on social media was like, why aren't they firing Gase? And everyone's like, why would they fire Gase? Like he's losing them all these games. They're going to get Trevor Lawrence. And then that turned around kind of in a weird way as well. We'll get to that, but it was a punchline of a season for the most part. And then we had the cover zero disaster, which felt like intentional tanking until you go back and look and be like, there was no oversight over that lunatic. And I mean, he was just going to call plays like that sometimes. Like that wasn't like, let's lose the gameplay. He called that play sometimes. He's like, I'm just getting, I mean, that's like stuff your little brother calls on Madden and you laugh like, oh my God, I'm going over the top on this kid. It just issue after issue. And then, it was, where is this weird? The weird game was the wins, I think. The wins were the weirdest part, weren't they?
Yes. Yeah. That was the weirdest part.
Looking at the two teams they beat were playoff teams. Not only
playoff teams.
They were both,
yes.
They actually beat
both teams that won playoff games.
Yeah, they were both 6
two teams that won playoff games.
And they both won a playoff game in the playoffs. And in fact, they beat them. Was it back to back or it was within 3 weeks?
Back to back, yeah.
It was back to back.
Yeah.
The Jets had a winning streak. That's just odd.
Let me reflect a little bit on this season, because it didn't start out where it was like team is going to be historically bad. Like, we knew with the Dolphins the prior season that was a team that was like in line to be potentially historically bad out of the gate. And of course, in week 1, they lose to the Ravens 49-3 or whatever it was, and it was like, oh yeah, they're as bad as we think they might be.
Oh yeah.
And they kind of came around and got better as the season went on, and that's normal. That's kind of normal when you have a team that's that dysfunctional out of the gate. The Jets weren't like that. Like, there was some modicum of optimism heading into their year last year. Like, their win total was 6.5, 7-ish. They were on the road against the Buffalo Bills in week 1, and they weren't even touchdown dogs in that spot. So it was it wasn't clear and obvious that they were going to be an absolute disaster out of the gate. And things didn't really come unwound until maybe like week 2. They get washed by the Niners at home. Week 3, they got absolutely blanked by the Colts on the road. And then they were favored on Thursday Night Football last year, going up against Mark Rippon's kid, Brett Rippon, or brother or nephew, going up against Rippon and the Broncos. They were favored. Darnold could not even get that win. They go 0-4. Then it just went sideways on them. Everything was bad. There was no price was long enough to take the points. Everything was just went to hell. They end up losing. I think they were the biggest spread of the season at the Chiefs. Were they? You want to guess what that number was? As I'm looking it up,
was it 13.5? Where was that game?
It was at Kansas City. They were 20-point dogs
20
at Kansas City.
Yep.
That was the biggest spread of the season. They did not cover 20 points again when they were playing the Chiefs.
Could have taken that.
Then they finally covered one at long last. They covered against the Patriots heading into their bye. Then they showed some friskiness against the Chargers, ultimately losing. And then you brought it up. As an 0-11 team, they had the Raiders on the absolute ropes, and they give up the touchdown with cover 0. That was embarrassing in every respect for every person involved.
There was a few Raiders games that just ended in incredulous fashion.
There were. That one was wild, and then 40-3 lost the next week to the Seahawks. Seahawks weren't even playing that great then. And then, you're right. They're an 0-13 team. They're taking on the Rams in LA. Nothing to lose, nothing to play for.
We were worried
in fact,
at
winning.
This point.
Yeah, in fact, if you win this game, you take yourself out of the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes, because the Jags are 1-1 win, and they have played an easier schedule than you.
Yep. We were worried about the Patriots game in week 17. I remember looking at it.
That Belichick was going to throw it.
Yeah, we're like,
to keep Trevor Lawrence from going to New York.
Yeah, we're like, this could get weird with the Patriots game. And then, of course, they rattle off 2 wins against playoff teams who, not only played in the playoffs, but won. The Rams game was super weird with just the amount of Rams F-ups, essentially. The Browns game was equally puzzling.
The Browns were going through a COVID thing. I don't think
they were missing all their receivers, like all their receivers.
Right?
But it was still like, all right, they should be able to. Like, they should be able to take care of this, right? And Darnold played halfway okay, and they lost that game. I think Cleveland didn't put up more than 20 points. It looks like, 23-16, 23-20, the Rams and those 2 wins. And then they did lose to the Patriots. But, it took them out of the Trevor sweepstakes, which I don't know. We'll look back at this. Like, if you never know, the nature versus nurture thing, like, well, what if Trevor's really good? Well, would Trevor have been good if he went to New York? Who knows? But if maybe, probably, it'll be interesting to look back at this in 5 years and remember those 2 games. There's a lot of games like that you don't really look back on, like where the Eagles drafted this year, because they did what they did in week 17. Like, little things like this can change a franchise. Like, if Wilson turns out to be the next coming, it's like, well, maybe those wins were a blessing in disguise. But it's everybody. I remember the consensus was like, when they won those games, it's like, man, they screwed up. Like, they did all this for nothing. Like, they had a terrible, embarrassing season for nothing. And then they won another game, and it's like, oh, this is getting worse. They're gonna have like the 4th pick. How bad can this get? They can't even tank right. And then at the end of the year, it was Gase. Gase finished his career up there 9-23.
Let's break down some of these 9. Geez, and even those 9 wins felt like it was a little. There were some lucky ones in there. So let's break this down a little bit more here for some of these performances. First of all, you had Darnold was only able to start 12 games. I forgot that there was a Joe Flacco experience.
4-game Flaccos. We'll get to that when we get to Miami.
Flaccos. I also can't believe this, but Darnold in 12 starts, he had 9 passing touchdowns. That's crazy bad. 11 ints and 9 passing touchdowns in 12 starts. I know that the passing offense was not good, but that's really bad. And then here's a quiz for you. You may be already looking at it. You may already know this, but who was their leading rusher last year?
I'll try that. Was it like Perrine or something terrible?
Well, Michael Pirine
was it Gore?
Second. It was Gore.
It had to be
Frank Gore. Frank Gore was their leading rusher. 37-year-old Frank Gore he was probably their top fantasy scorer across the whole team. Who was their leading receiver?
Probably the slot guy.
It was
like short stuff, like Crowder.
Jamison Crowder, that's right. Yeah. He led them in receptions.
I don't hate Crowder.
Not only was Crowder, he led them in receptions, he led them in receiving yards, he led them in receiving touchdowns, and he was their best passer. 1 attempt, 1 completion, 43-yard touchdown pass. So Jamison Crowder did it all for the New York Jets offense last year.
Yeah, and
this unit was hot garbage.
Quick back of the envelope math. Darnold played in the Rams and the Browns games. So Flacco lost every game he started. That didn't turn out to be that didn't turn out to be a great investment with him either. Although in his 4, I found it, I scrolled down. He had 6 touchdowns in 4 games, and Darnold had 9 in 12. So
yeah.
I mean, Flacco was at least going for it.
Yeah, but when you're in the middle of the season, you're trying to save your season, and you trot Flacco and Frank Gore out there in the year 2020, our Lord, that is really something. And yeah, ultimately this was a true scratch it all, throw it in the bin, start over type of roster season every which way. And thankfully they relieved Adam Gase of his duties for the second time he was fired in his career. Peyton Manning got that guy 2 head coaching jobs. How about that?
Yeah. All right. So let's say we're sitting there.
Not an offensive genius.
All right, turns out. We're at the bye. We're at the Chiefs game. The Chiefs just kicked the ever living shit out of them.
Yes.
They have the Patriots up next at home. Like,
somebody took those 20 points.
There was rumblings. There was rumblings of like, all right, they'll fire him after the bye week. I mean, like, even though we joked about like, no, you have to keep him. He's great at losing. You're going to get Trevor. But like, I would have said
the team quit on him. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The team wasn't playing for him. Like, I kind of in the back of my mind, I had the odds set pretty decent that like, get rid of him if he loses to the Patriots at home, because the Patriots weren't anything special. Like, if you lose the Patriots at home, which they probably were going to do, like, just get rid of him. Just cut him loose in the bye week. Yeah, get rid of him during the bye week. Bring anybody else in. It doesn't matter. If they need to get, if they have to hit the ground running and they have issues, whatever. You're just going to lose those games either way. But he made it all the way to the end of the season.
He did, yeah. That Patriots game at home against one of the tougher defenses on your schedule, that was the best offensive performance that they had all season, and it was not close. They scored 27 points in a pretty points. That was a good performance. That was the death rattle for that offense, for that team, really. Okay, so we go into the offseason. It's an unmitigated disaster. You even lose out on the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes, as we've mentioned a bunch now. They were pretty quick in pulling the trigger on the next coach in Robert Saleh. They were pretty quick in scooping Mike LaFleur, the San Francisco passing game coordinator, run the offense. Another LaFleur after the the noted success of Matt LaFleur in Green Bay, Mike LaFleur all of a sudden was a hot candidate. So they bring in Mike LaFleur to run the offense. They bring in the linebackers coach from Atlanta, Jeff Ulbrich, to run the defense. That was a surprise, but maybe he has some kind of long-standing connection to Robert Saleh I don't know about. But that's fine. And then they were quick on the trigger to kind of figure out that Zach Wilson was their guy at number 2.
Yeah, when we were, obviously we did a lot of draft prop content when we were getting around that time of the year, and that was, the first pick was very solidified very quickly. Even though, we're doing that still today. Like, Detroit's looking at a few different guys where it's like, no, dude, it's Cade Cunningham, people. What are we trying to do? Put smoke screens out? Like, they didn't even give us the courtesy of doing that. It was Trevor. And then the second pick quickly solidified. Those odds shot up, from the beginning of when there was only 2 or 3 draft props on the board. And then a few weeks later, it's a very big number on laying it if you wanted to take him second overall. And then the third was a mystery up until the damn pick, which was kind of fun because we don't often get that. It made for a lot of good speculation. But yeah, they settled in on their guy. And in fact, they had 3? If they drafted there, they would have drafted like 34th, 35th, somewhere in there. So like 3 picks in the first 35 because they ended up having that the Jamal Adams pick.
Yeah, the Jamal Adams pick, right? Which
and
they
really,
traded up to get an interior lineman. Maybe the one misstep in my opinion, of what was otherwise a very good offseason for the Jets front office.
Yeah, I don't mind. I think he's going to be fine. I don't know if I would have got an interior guy there with all the other needs you have. Maybe they saw something they really liked in this USC guy, but they liked their quarterback. They went up and got a guard they really wanted. And then Elijah Moore, again, when we were doing draft props, he was one of the names that was discussed as like, who's going to be the 5th or 6th wide receiver in the first round. And his name, it was really kind of a mystery. There was like 6 guys that were like, well, any of these guys could go in 20 to 32. And he was a name that was getting tossed around as possible first round talent. He was just outside it. So they add him and Corey Davis? Or no,
Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore out of Ole Miss.
No, Elijah Moore and Corey Davis through free agency. So
okay.
They added to their their wide receiver. Yeah, their wide receiver room was augmented.
They brought in Keelan Cole too. Keelan Cole was a good player for the Jaguars.
Yeah, that's fair. They got they got some nice depth now at receiver because they still have Denzel Mims, and obviously we talked about Crowder. So if you're gonna try to improve quickly, I guess try to improve on offense and let the defense get there eventually.
They didn't really lose anyone in free agency. They managed to get assets back for Sam Darnold somehow, so that's a win. I guess what are your thoughts on losing the likes of Brian Poole and Arthur Maule as cornerbacks? I didn't really have high grades on either of those guys. None of the players that left or retired or moved on were of note to me. And yeah, I think they picked they picked a number of guys out of the free agency pile who all have reasonably high upside, and they didn't have to pay him a ton. Their biggest free agency acquisition was Carl Lawson. By I think pretty much any measure, he was a top 10 pass rush producer last year. Can reasonably expect him to give you something, maybe not quite as good as what we saw from him last year, but
he topped out.
He'll do something. He'll do something for you. Got to be an upgrade over what you had last year, which was zero ability to rush the passer. The Corey Davis move again. You're kind of there's a reason that guy like him is in free agency. He has kind of a finally delivers on the promise type of season for Tennessee, and they let him walk. But you take, your beggars can't be choosers when it comes to your wide receiver talent at this point. If you are the Jets.
He was 5th in the NFL in yards per route run last year. You get a lot of, it was Jonnu and AJ, and there was a lot of other mouths to feed as far as who you can hype up in that offense. I think it was a good addition. Again, the Carl Lawson thing was expensive. But if you want a good pass rusher, like pass rushers are cheap, and that is what it costs. It wasn't.
Plus, you had a bunch of salary cap room.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You had the room to spend that money on Lawson, on Davis, on a few other guys, like you said, Keelan Cole, Sheldon Rankins. They are kind of going to have a whole new defensive line, and actually has some decent names on it. The secondary is still going to be a bit of an issue. May is okay, but I think they're going to have trouble in coverage still. I mean, just in general, the defense probably isn't going to be good.
That's right. They retained. That's right. They retained May. That was nice. Retaining May was a nice move. Quinnen Williams is obviously blossoming. That's looking like a make. That they made that pick well. They bring in Sheldon Rankins to put next to him. He's been a fine producer at the NFL level. They bring in Gerard Davis, who is pretty forgettable for me from an off-ball linebacker standpoint, but they're not paying him a ton of money. Similarly, they upgraded at 7 or 8 starting positions on this team.
You got yourself to like league average at a few spots, and then probably above it, and on your pass rush, like your edge rush will be decent. Actually, your interior pressure will be okay, especially if Lawson's playing well and if the linebackers offer you anything. Like the front 7 will be okay. The secondary will be pretty bad. Defense as a whole is going to be a weakness in a sea of weaknesses. And like again, if I'm looking upside, it's you added some wide receivers, you retained your best receiver from last year. You got to hope this quarterback works. Like the new line, Becton's still very young in the league, and how they run an offense down in Louisville is very different from how they run an offense in the NFL. You got a new right tackle as well, so there's going to be some continuity issues up front, and you have a new quarterback, some new receivers. Like the offense sputtering out of the gate, not going to surprise me, but I have high-ish hopes that the offense will be fun, better. I mean, we were watching games that Joe Flacco started last year. It can't get worse.
Yeah, I guess let's stick with the kind of let's talk about Gase gone and bringing Saleh in, and what does this roster defensively mesh with a Robert Saleh style of defense? And I guess do they have enough? Do they have enough horses? Do they have enough bodies in the front 7 that they can get away with having somewhat suspect play out of their cornerbacks? Because I got to tell you, this trio of Austin, Hall, and Guidry for cornerbacks, there's going to be some separation. If you're going up against elite wide receivers, they're going to be able to get separation against these guys, which means it's going to be pretty damn important that your front 7, and especially maybe specifically your front 4, is not giving the passer a ton of time to read and dissect this defense, right?
If you use a Tampa 2 or anything of that ilk, you have to be a really good tackler. I don't think they have that. I don't think the guys have the speed to run the kind of defense he wants. I don't think they have the talent. Like the secondary, it doesn't matter. Like somebody in the chat brought up a good point and said the defense will at least be coached up. Solid defensive guy. Hopefully he really trusts the DC he brought in, and he'll be obviously bigly involved in the defense as well. It's just like you could get Belichick, Lombardi, Walsh, and all the coaches of yesteryear all together in a room. If there's no talent, you can only coach up guys so much. Like Saleh just doesn't have enough to work with, I don't think, to make this defense work in year 1. And the kind of coverage he's normally running just isn't going to work. So that'll be something to watch for if he adjusts to the talent, or if he tries to run the defense he ran. But defense is a slower turnaround. If you look at what he did, and honest to God, what he did in San Francisco was pretty amazing considering the injuries. Like guys were dropping like flies, and that defense still played very tough. So I got to give him credit there, but I gotta agree with you. You don't have the kind of names here you don't have the kind of talent here to turn it around. Maybe next year. I'm hopeful for this long term.
I agree with you. Saleh's obvious good job of coaching the San Francisco defense when they went to the Super Bowl was actually not as good of a coaching job as last year, where he made out very, very, very eatable chicken salad out of chicken shit. He really did take those, do well getting those guys coached up. So that is a good point. I think,
and honestly, this year too. they led the league in defensive adjusted games lost. As far as
Wow.
to simplify,
Niners last year? Yeah.
they had the worst injury luck as a defensive unit in the league, and they were a top 10 unit still.
Yeah.
So he did a great job. I think he will do a great job. He needs to get his guys in. He
doesn't have a Fred. He doesn't have a Fred Warner. He does have a Buckner type in Quinnen Williams potentially, right? I guess what's Quinnen Williams' ceiling in your opinion? It's definitely not as good as who's the Rams guy? Aaron Donald. It's not Donald. Is it Buckner?
I mean, he could. You get him with a good defensive coach, a good defensive staff, and you get some guys around him and some linebackers to, back that scheme up. Like his ceiling's probably all pro. He could be very, very good down the road.
Okay, yeah, I mean he was also very, very young when they drafted him. He was super young, so he's got a lot of room to grow in terms of his quality of play. I like that you're putting two horses on either side of him, in Carl Lawson and Rankins. I think you might get a surprisingly solid season out of Quinnen Williams in his third year. I would expect it at least.
He had a good grade for an interior guy last year, especially for the people he played around. Everything's an individual grade with a lot of these graded PFF or whoever you're using. It's individually graded, but the context you need to add is the constantly playing from behind. You're not going to get a lot of pressure when teams are just running the ball because you're losing, and you're not going to have good luck when you have bad edge rushers, bad linebackers. Like he played well in a bad team, so. I'm very hopeful for him long term too.
Okay, so let's say the strength of this team is their defensive line and their defense in general. That's not necessarily how you want to approach winning games in 2021 in the NFL, but that's fine. That's at least something better than they had last year. How about this offense? Let's talk about Zach Wilson. Let's talk about the additions that they made. And again, I don't have a strong read on what Mike LaFleur's role was with San Francisco. I kind of ascribe and attribute all of that success to Kyle Shanahan because we have some signal from him otherwise as a coordinator that he's that good. So, we can assume LaFleur is a smart guy and picked up a bunch of concepts from Shanahan. Is there anything about this situation where you have youngish offensive line, a first-year player and a second-year player protecting the blind side of your rookie quarterback, an expensive center, and then a couple of question marks on your right side? Can this even remotely resemble anything positive we saw in San Francisco when LaFleur was there as the passing game coordinator?
Again, yeah, like you said, it's hard to figure out too much about this guy, but you would think just by a little bit of osmosis here, like when Shanny was the offensive coordinator down at Atlanta, he was the offensive assistant. So he's been with them since, I'm gonna have to look, maybe even before that. He was with the Browns the year before with Shanahan. Before that, he was at Davidson. I do not think Shanahan ever coached Davidson. So starting in 2014, he's followed Kyle Shanahan around. So that's a good 6 years of being around the guy. And some of his,
that's like a decent mentorship.
It feels like a decent mentorship. I mean, I don't put any stock in the fact that we think the other LaFleur is pretty good. I mean, I guess the apples probably fell from the same tree. So hopefully,
I would also say thinking the other LaFleur is good is conflating a little bit that Aaron Rodgers resurged and that LaFleur had a relatively easy schedule the last 2 years. So he wins 13 games both years. And then he also,
it's tough to do that too.
And he also made a mistake that cost his team a Super Bowl appearance.
Well, I mean, Shanahan's done stuff like that too in the past. So everybody does that sort of thing. So I don't have a lot of knowledge on LaFleur. If anybody has any nuggets, feel free to drop those on Twitter. I'd love to know somebody who followed his career a little closer than me. But if I don't know much about LaFleur, I feel like I know even less about Zach Wilson. And I watched a lot of BYU games. This offense is going to be predicated on a guy who played in a weird schedule. Everybody had some weird schedules last year in college because of COVID, but no matter what, it was not an SEC schedule. And like we've said before, I can't remember who we were talking about, but we said, hey, Big Ben, Hall of Fame career, Flacco had a couple really good years, including the greatest postseason in NFL history, probably. Players from smaller schools who played lesser competition in college have been able to come up if they have the tools, if they land in the right spot and they get the right coaching.
Josh Allen.
Things, Josh Allen, Wyoming. Yeah, Wyoming's schedule sucks balls compared to anybody in Power 5, obviously. And you get a guy, and he was pretty rough from the start, and he got the right coaching. He had the right attitude. They figured it out, proved a lot of people wrong, including us. And I think if you get a guy like that lands in the right spot, it can work no matter how shitty the schedule was. If he has the tools and the willingness and he's coachable, it can fall together. But we are traditionally horrific evaluators of college quarterback talent, and I will not be taking a long swing at this thing like, oh, I think he has an arm. He seems to have the presence on the field. But again,
I bet Sam Darnold 10-1 ran Rookie of the Year back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, when you're facing a Utah State pass rush or whatever, it's different than getting up here and facing the damn Bills. So I don't know. I'm tentatively optimistic, but this guy could be a complete Cade McNown for all I know.
Ooh, interesting. There's a lot of higher drafted quarterbacks you could have gone with, I think.
Achilles Smith.
Yeah, he was an unknown for sure. Okay, so Zach Wilson, our friend Thor Nystrom, who we talked to leading up to the draft, was giving us comps, and he pulled out the one thing that made me threw cold water on me about Zach Wilson. And I think you probably remember this. Yep. It was basically like against the Dregs, he just absolutely lit it up. He was impossible to stop when he was going up against kind of the lower.
So he should be good in practice.
Tier teams. So he should be great in practice, right? Because he's playing against the Jets.
Yes.
Well, yeah. And then the flip side of that was he was pedestrian at the college level going up against the more stout defenses that he faced. And that's usually a little bit of a red flag. I like the Mormon Mahomes kind of narrative and nickname, and I hope that he's got that because he's got an arm. Like, does he have the physical tools to perform at the NFL level? 100% yes.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't see the scheme, even extrapolating the scheme from Shanahan's system combined with the sort of the youth and inexperience across the line, youth and inexperience in the wide receiver room, and complete utter lack of explosion and game breaking in the right running back room. Like this is a pretty bad offense still. And throwing in a young quarterback who hasn't ever done it is probably going to look bad a lot this season. I don't think you can expect him to slide in and produce magic, considering what you have talent-wise on this line and what you have talent-wise in terms of weapons. Is that fair?
I mean, the comp, again, hopefully without the massive injury, is just Burrow last year. And Burrow, obviously, a much different prospect coming in. He'd done it at the highest of high levels, had a season unlike any other in college. But when he got to the NFL, it's like, oh man, this guy has a real questionable O-line, some receivers, the defense isn't quite there. The coaching staff is a big question mark there. And it's like, we'll see flashes, but we're not going to be ever excited by a full 60 minutes of him. Like we're not going to see a full good game. And I don't know if we ever really did. And I think that's probably that's the ceiling. I don't think it's going to be I could see, putting some money on Rookie of the Year. I don't hate it because I did. And there were some decent numbers out there. And just, I think of
what number did you get for that?
Like 11 or 10, somewhere in there. Someone has to win it. I feel like it's going to be a quarterback. And I think Lawrence's number was just a little too low.
Sure.
Again, schedules are probably going to dictate that I will rebet this. We'll get to schedule here eventually, and I'll show you why. But I felt like the added receivers were going to give him some flat. Like it was going to be a 5-win season where he had like 3,800 yards and 22 touchdowns, and just it was like, oh, he looked good. It's just the team sucks.
Wait, tell me again what your expectation would be. Say that one more time.
Like
a 5-win season with
5-win season with like 3,800, 4,000 yards. What's his props?
Yeah, we can look that up in a second, but okay, because I feel like we're in store more for like a Sam Darnold rookie season kind of deal.
Yeah, I mean, what was Herbert's
Sam
stats?
Darnold had 4 wins. He threw for 3,000 yards and he went 17 touchdowns, 15 ints.
Yeah, I think that his floor is probably worse than that. So Herbert, again, 1 fewer game. So the numbers, I probably should have said over 4,000. We got 17 games. But Herbert, 4,300 yards, 31 touchdowns. That gives you a rookie year, right? Like that gives it to you. Like 31 would win.
The Chargers were so much more prepared to score points.
Yeah, there's you don't have that kind of offense around you even with a coach that was probably holding you back a little, and a medical staff that was obviously questionable. And Herbert didn't even play the first game or two there, and he's still 31 touchdowns. So I don't think that's feasible. Mid-20s, 4,000 yards, mid-20s puts you in the conversation, and I think his ceiling is there. If this offensive line gels, if he's turns out to be not a complete bust, and this LaFleur character can get things going. The running back situation isn't good, so hopefully that helps them throw more. It's like, well,
that's a fair point, but at the same time, like the telltales of what Shanahan's doing so well in San Francisco really revolve around teams buying into that he wants to run it on every down, but really is doing misdirection and getting guys schemed wide freaking open with tons of yak potential.
Yeah.
I just don't see the pieces in place to pull that off with the Jets the way that they are rostered currently.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be immediate impact from the wide receiver additions and the offensive upgrade, the offensive play calling. Otherwise, that ticket's in the trash, and I'm probably not rebetting after. You want to look at the schedule?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's
pull this puppy up. I'm imagining it's pretty hard. I'm imagining that they're not favored in many games.
No, and like I alluded to, like if I were rebetting, it might be after the stretch where they start with 3 road games in their first 5, including an altitude game, a trip to London, and one of their home games being Tennessee, division champ from last year. So that's not great for getting your season going, getting your feet underneath you when you're a young rookie coming into this league. It's not that young. He's from BYU. He's like 32, I guess. But New England feels like a game you could win if things work out and New England doesn't figure out their quarterback situation proper. Carolina,
but it's still a tough defense. Like that's still a game. That's still a game that's going to be dictated by defense.
Yeah, your offense has to work. Like your offense has to work right away against Carolina, New England. Denver is another tough defense. Tennessee, that's a little bit of a respite, but your defense stinks. They're going to score 30 on you. That's going to be in Tennessee, or that's home. So I mean, can you win a track?
I don't hate that spot for them. I think you're probably that like let's assume that. I mean, I guess I don't hate them up against a bad defense. Like if you're going up against the Tennessee and Atlanta, who else is a bad? There are not many bad defenses on this schedule.
Cincy, Houston.
I don't think Cincy's going to have a bad defense this year.
It's not going to be great. It'll be middle of the pack.
You'll have a bad passing defense for Philly, bad Jacksonville. Yeah, there's not many bad defenses on here. When you have a bad defense with this Jets team, I'm okay taking the points, right?
Because, especially if they're 0-3, you get 3.5 points there. That's a Jets bet.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. That's the idea. That's the idea exactly. Like this is like the defense. You're going to be able to pass on these guys, but they're going to win some 1v1s in the line. And if you're going up against a somewhat questionable offensive line and a little older quarterback, or a quarterback that can't make you pay through the air like the Patriots, there's for sure there's a there are a couple of games that I think are of interest on here where I'll
And
probably talk
somebody in
myself
the
into a
chat
point.
asked that, like, why is New England a bigger favorite than Tennessee? It's close, but it probably is the fact that like they have a serviceable defense, and the Jets defense stinks enough where New England can probably just win a 12-10 game there.
We'll get to
And
Tennessee eventually when we do these
Tennessee's
breakdowns, but their power
Tennessee's
number
defense
is
going to be
their
bad.
yeah. They're just to kind of not to spoil it because we'll get to Tennessee when we get there, but their power number is like surprisingly low. Like the market's not really high on them from a game by game. How many points we're going to give you, want to lay, blah blah blah.
The market
the
adjustment
Jets,
for the Art Smith move has been massive.
yeah, right. They're
Couple
expecting them
different
to be a
ways.
pretty average offense this year and a pretty bad defense. The Jets are expected to be the 30th best team from a power number standpoint with a -4. That is only better than the Lions at -5.5 and the Texans at -7.
Is that jive with yours? It's pretty close.
Pretty close, yeah.
I have
They're
a bigger
expected to
range for
be-
them.
They're expected to be the 30th best offense, which is exactly in line with my expectation. And they are expected to be the 24th best defense, which is a little lower than I have them graded.
Yeah, that's pretty close for me. And like you said, the schedule isn't like some Bearcat, but it's not easy. Like coming off your bye to face New England at New England, that's not a great way. And then, you do get a sweet spot there with a very beatable team in Cincinnati who's closer to your level than a lot of these other teams, and they're in a back-to-back-to-back. There's not a ton of those any year, so you get a nice little spot there. But then at Indy, facing Buffalo, you get Miami coming off their Thursday night game, extra rest. The Buffalo one. Yeah. But again, the Buffalo one.
Miami has extra rest both times they play you.
Yeah, but Miami gets double dip with the bye and the Thursday night football. But you get two advantage spots in the opponent playing a back-to-back, and you're off Thursday night, but it's Buffalo. Like, yeah, you get some advantage spots there, but you're playing an elite team that it might not really matter. Like, it sucks it's wasted on that. In fact, they have a couple of those, and one's Philly, which is a team they can hang with. But the other one is they get a team on a back-to-back roadie late in the season, and it's Tampa. Again, an elite team. Like they have to face Miami. Like you said, Miami off their bye later. They get New Orleans off Thursday night. So they get two straight teams that are extra rest after the Philadelphia game. There's not easy stretches. Like the Houston, Philly, maybe New Orleans, if their quarterback situation doesn't work out. That's the only easy stretch. And that New Orleans, again, has a rest advantage. Like there's really only a two game easy spot. And the rest is pretty effing rough. Yeah, and part of the deal is they're just bad teams are going to have a lot of big numbers.
Yeah, this is not a team that I'm expecting to make their win total comfortably. They may make it uncomfortably, but it's going to be a fight and it's going to be a claw. It's going to be a battle. It's going to be a war. I think this is a team I'll probably take the points with regularly this season. I can talk myself into a lot of these spots being advantage spots where they're going to be getting a whole buttload of points. That might be a fun way to play these guys. I guess I'm hoping that they're 0-3 too. I'm hoping that they are a hard fought 0-2 heading into that week 3 game at Denver, and that line is a little shorter than 5.5 because I would love to back Denver in that spot. And then I would say the opposite. And then so hopefully like they just get utterly nuked in Denver, and then week 4, week 5, you're getting like closer to a touchdown against good offenses, and that might be a fun kind of way to play them. But this is not a schedule.
You know how they get their win total?
How do they get it?
They get it if is Trubisky the backup in Buffalo?
Yes.
If Trubisky's starting week 18 because Buffalo is locked up playoff positioning or something. And even that, I mean, we can say all we want about Mitchell Trubisky. He's probably a top 5 backup.
Yeah,
like he's got enough starting chops, and he's played well enough. Like
certainly top 10.
That's not the easiest. Like that's not getting to face Davis Webb or whatever. And I think he's their third stringer. It's not the easiest backup position or backup to play. Maybe they don't win that game anyway. Maybe Trubisky embarrasses them. But getting to their win total is going to be rough. It's going to be it's going to be a building season for the Jets.
Dude, you know who the Jets backups are? Who in the hell are these guys?
Yeah. Go look at their running. Go look at their running back
Morgan,
depth.
James Morgan, and Mike White. Huh?
Mike White, Texas. That's a Dan question, really.
Sure, sure. Texas. What about James Morgan?
JP Morgan.
James Morgan. Jimmy Morgan is the Jets QB2.
You can name
Florida International.
Oh, you
James
already looked
Morgan.
it up.
Mike White was Western Kentucky's Mike White. All right. So Zach Wilson better stay healthy, because that gets sideways on you real quick if you got to throw those guys out to the Wolves. And as we don't even need to point it out, but Jets QBs have found a way to miss time every single season. They find a way. Yeah. So there'll be some weird stuff going on there. But ultimately, I don't know that this is a team that is destined for greatness in 2021. And let's look at their odds and see if the market agrees.
I think the market agrees. And like I said, if I can see something, a little glimmer out of Wilson, but they're still losing games, I could think about double dipping. I don't mind my position there, but man, I don't want to lay the juice on under 6.5 because of the possibility of some weird stuff at the end of the season with 2 possible 1 seeds resting in the last couple of weeks. I'm not taking the over in that. The Super Bowl, nope. AFC East are all not things we're going to bet. And they are an AFC team where things are awful tough to make the playoffs. In fact, we'll get to that when we talk about Miami. You could win 10, 11 games and not make this to make playoff number. No chance. Plus 500 is a bet. 750 might be value. That should probably be 2,000.
I could see that. I guess their schedule is, no, you're right. That's not about it.
If you had to make one bet on here, I'd lay the 50 cents and take the under a 6.5.
I would too.
You made me make one bet. I don't have anything.
Yeah, I agree with that because I do think there is a chance that this offense is stuck in mud, and that it takes Wilson at least a year to really kind of find his form. I also think it's a decent chance that
injury risk is high enough with him too.
Yeah,
ramshackle,
right. And honestly,
not ramshackle, young offensive line.
We were just looking at their schedule. The games that they're favored in, they might not be favorites by the time those come around. Cincy could click. Houston might have Watson in that spot week 12. Philly might have Watson in that spot week 13. Jacksonville could click, and they're playing them late. They might not be favored in any games when it comes down to it. So I think this is going to be a tough number for them to make that 6.5. Anyone that really feels strongly about it and bets their win total over, you're going to be in for a sweat. It's going to be a sweaty season watching the Jets.
Yeah, enjoy that.
The strengths are just not where you want them to be to win football on a quick turnaround like this.
Yeah, and maybe Jets alt under is Moondog Michelaccio. I'm so bad at Italian names. Giorgio brings up. If they're bad, right. They could be real bad. Like an under 5.5, under 4.5. That's not the worst look.
That's pretty common for rookie quarterbacks who start full season to win 4 or 5 games. That's pretty damn common. So that wouldn't shock me at all. All right. Did you have any other thoughts on ways you want to have to bet the Jets this season? I guess, are they a team that in game or second half you would play to make a comeback? Do they have the right recipe? They're going to be able to run stop. So their offense is going to have some chances late. Is this a team that can score backdoor garbage time points against the prevent D?
That's what I was about to say. Jets team total overs, maybe don't bet them against the spread because it's they're down by 21 and they score 24 second half points to lose by 21 because their defense just keeps giving second half overs. If it's going to be a fun offense, and you talk about a run stopping defense, you stop the run, you get the ball back and score, then you're a little closer. Then that team doesn't run anymore. They go down and score in your ass because your secondary sucks. So then you get the ball back, you score again, and then it just kind of repeats itself. Second half overs, maybe it'll be. We'll see how bad the secondary is, I guess. Chuck it up to Elijah, Patrick says. Yeah, I like that. So
Elijah might be a decent surprise player from a production standpoint, just because of the way that this offense is going to be run. What do you think? Sure. You think he gets enough reps to be a factor, or do you think this is the Davis Crowder Mims show?
I think he'll get rotated in enough. And again, we are sitting here. It's late July. We haven't seen his camp. We haven't seen much of him yet. So we'll have to see.
In general, you want to guess what the average team total expected for the Jets is this season?
5, 6.
No, the expected team total. Like, so I got it broken down by because the spreads and 17. Totals are up for every game. It's actually 21. The minimum is 18.5, maximum 24. Their average team total is going to be around 21. Which is maybe a stretch.
High in the first half. Like first half unders, second half back. Nothing about the Jets is ever fun, Andy. Yeah, sorry. Eventually. You know what? If you were like 70 years old, you would have had some fond memories of the Jets. They won a Super Bowl. My squad's never won a Super Bowl. They did win the NFL championship, and like before that was a thing. So those don't really count for anything. And we're on to Miami.
Let's talk about Miami.
Again, I alluded to this with the don't bet on the Jets to make the playoffs. If you really love them, bet the season win total over. 10-6, the only team in the NFL with a winning record that missed the playoffs last year. In fact, in the NFC, the Bears and the football team did not have winning records, made the playoffs, but there was a grip of 11-5 teams in the AFC. 10-6 did not make it. They're actually obviously the first team out in the AFC playoffs. So kind of forgot that they had a decent year win-wise, and then I went back and looked at this year. And, man, we broke down the Jets here and said, like, oh, there was some weirdness there. Miami had a weird season, a real weird season, especially the back and forth on some of the quarterback stuff, a couple of those games. Like you remember the Arizona game with the missed field goals and just the back and forth lunacy in the second half. The fact that we had like a +2.5 on that game or something. Like I think we had Dolphins +2.5 or something.
I had him on the money line, and I had him plus a bigger number. And that whole game was just
maybe it was 3.5. We could have lost by a field goal, or the whole thing was heartburn. But yeah, it was a goofy year that was given to be. We had a hip injury. We weren't sure what was going on, so it was started off with they faced Cam right off the bat, lost the game. The Bills, very good team. They actually played him halfway decent, especially in the second half. Got some garbage points, as Ryan Fitzpatrick does when he throws 50 times. He will get you those garbage points. Beat the tar out of the Jags, and then that was like a Minshew
Cardinals
game.
Were 6-point favorites. I had +6.
Was it +6? Okay, I think we were worried about losing by a touchdown because it was often tied. It felt like in that one. Seattle beat them. And Seattle was like, that's when Seattle was fun, because that was still early in the season. So it was like the fun Seattle offense still. And then the Niners game, which was goofy. That was like a big Fitzpatrick game. The Niners were obviously in the midst of having everybody get hurt. Dolphins put up a shitload of points, beat the ever-living tar out of the Jets in the classic. I mean, it was 2020. We saw a Flacco versus Fitzgerald game. That was a ton of fun, and that was the game that Tua got his first action. He came in and mopped up, started the next game, beat the Rams.
Yeah, the Rams beat themselves.
Yeah, that was the thing. So he beat the Rams. You remember how much offense they had in that game? Total yards?
The
Dolphins.
It was nothing, like 180.
145 yards of total offense, the lowest the lowest by a winning team all season. But
didn't they get
was
2 defensive
Van
scores?
Ginkel. Yeah, Van Ginkel got
They
his
got
fumble.
Van Ginkeled.
You
Yes,
got
the
Van
Rams got
Ginkel.
Van Ginkeled.
Yeah, Jason, and then
that was the theme of their whole season, really.
I think it was like multiple
Fluky turnover luck.
Yeah, a blocked kick that gave him a real short field, the fumble recovery. It was just like, yeah, they scored 28 points, but they had 145 yards of offense. You do the math.
Didn't they all
there.
score all 28 points in like the second quarter or something insane
It was,
too? Like,
it
that
was
was
by
the
half.
weirdest shit game.
It was
28
10 at half. They won 28-17. And then you get to the Cardinals game, which again was a cardiac arrest for 3 hours.
Yeah,
Zane
they gave
Gonzalez
up 14
missed a
on
big
the
kick.
defense gave up 14 unanswered in that one. They were down 7 late, and I was sweating my ass off.
Right out of the halftime, they just looked like shit. But then we go Chargers, which Chargers at this point are like, oh, the Chargers are good. Like Herbert's going to do this, and then they go and beat the Chargers. There was a lot of these games where just a lot of shit didn't make sense last year. I think we run into this every year when we do autopsies. And then finally the Broncos game where Tua got hurt there. And then Fitzpatrick came back in. Tua came back later in the season. The rest of the season was semi-forgettable outside of, like the Chiefs game. They made a go of it late in the, the second half.
The Chiefs gave them that cover. Oh my God, did they give them that cover?
The Chiefs let them score a lot.
Oh yeah, that was the one where for like the first time ever when you have a big plus number, the coach makes the right decision and doesn't try to force it to get the touchdown late. He just kicks the field goal way ahead of with lots of time left, and then does the onside kick, and it doesn't work out, and they end up with like a 1 touchdown margin.
It was a 6-point game. 8. They were down 30-10 in the fourth quarter, lost by 6. Yes, covered that game.
Coach of the year, Brian Flores.
Coach of the year. Yeah, beat the Patriots. The Raiders game, which they should have,
that was insane.
Beat the tar out of the Raiders.
That was insane.
Super crazy game. They win that game, go to 10-5, and then they face the Bills late in the year, give up 50 million points, and don't make the playoffs.
That's right.
As far as where they are in the rebuild,
were they eliminated from playoff contention?
Yeah, when they needed that win.
Game where they lost 56-26. They needed to win that game, right, to get in.
Yeah, with the loss, I believe they were eliminated just based on that because somebody
if they had won, they could have kept the Colts out or something, right? Or they're in, the Colts were out.
Lee Sharp, he had a big old flow chart. I'd have to go look at the flow chart.
It was complicated.
There was a lot of teams that were, and not only in or out or doing some jockeying for position, very complicated. Yeah, Patrick brings up Mahomes throwing picks. Mahomes threw some bad picks against that Miami defense. Miami's defense was pretty fun last year.
I thought Miami. I don't even know if it was Mahomes playing bad as much as it was Miami was just. They were their defense was on a heater. They were taking the ball away. They were going to take. They were going to take the ball away from you, though. Like that was a team that was going to take the ball away from you.
And to that point, they had some very good players. I think this rebuild, especially on defense, has been faster than I had expected or hoped. And like Xavier Howard, top 5, top 3 corner. Like they have some really good pieces on the secondary. They have some really good pieces across the whole defense, and they've managed to put this roster together nicely over the past few years from when they were, a laughable team. And really, like, it was a weird year with some weird games. And, Fitzpatrick started a bunch of these games. Both quarterbacks got hurt. They still managed to win 10 games. They still had a top 5, top 3 pick because of where what was their pick? It was 6.
They had they did the terrible thing where they had the third and they traded down to 12 and they traded back up to 6.
Yeah. So they had a top 5 pick to start with and a winning season. So not a bad year. The war chest is full. And I think a lot of hopefulness in South Beach for the upcoming next few years.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no. This was a sick defense. I was more than happy to get involved with these guys last year, based solely on the strength of how great their cornerback play was. Byron Jones was a sick addition for them last year.
Oh, yeah.
Xavier Howard went from like looking like a guy that you gave money that you absolutely should not have to a guy that, oh, maybe he deserves more money. In a blink of an eye, that happened. Also, like across their D line, there were no like obvious standout, like, oh my God, this guy is a monster. Yet they somehow managed to tally up 41 sacks. I think a lot of those were probably coverage sacks. 41 sacks, by the way, was good enough for top 10 in the NFL from a sack standpoint, even though you don't have a single guy on this list who's like oh yeah, that guy was a sack monster. So it was a pretty outstanding team defensive effort for these guys last year. They were unbelievable in the takeaway department. What were they? +9 turnover margin. A bunch of those turned into points. Anytime
Especially
your
against the
defense is
Rams.
scoring points, that makes it that much easier on your offense. Not just the Rams. The Niners game, they were
the Chiefs
sick.
game.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what got them in it late. They were ball hawks. You talk about up front some of the pressures. They do lose Shaq Lawson to the Texans. They're probably going to end up starting. And again, they had 2 first-round picks. They had 2 second-round picks. Like Jalen Phillips, Miami, right to Miami. He's a local kid. Going to probably start right there on the edge, and hopefully that works out. In fact, like, if you want things to work out, you're probably going to need a couple of these rookies to hit, because we've said this over and over and over again. The AFC is tough. I think obviously 10 wins don't mean what it used to, because there's 17 games, but there might be an 11-win team in the AFC that is not in the playoffs. So you do need to hit on some of these moves. You do need to hit on some of these rookies, and need to take another step forward if you want to end up in the playoffs, I think. Yeah,
you had enough draft capital that you really could have controlled the draft in its entirety, and because you had the 3rd pick from the Texans, which was just highway robbery.
Hilarious, really.
And then, yeah, I guess the only other thing that I want to kind of point to that was a big offseason change, besides everything that was mentioned, which I think was all good. Actually, did you mention the wide receiver acquisition, Will Fuller?
No,
we'll talk about that when we get to the offense.
Adding Waddle in the draft and adding Fuller through free agency, I think is going to be the biggest improvement we're going to see from this team from last year to this year. New OC
was big.
New OC is big.
I
don't know much about George Godsey. He was the tight ends coach.
Yeah. Who was the guy that got fired by Tweet? Do you remember that? They're like, oh yeah, they're parting ways within we haven't made an announcement. And the next day, like, okay, now he's gone.
I forgot that's how that went down. That's not cool.
Cam something? Who was it? Why am I blanking? It was Chan Gailey. That was
Chan Gailey. That was it. Well, no, that came out, and then they're like, psych, that wasn't real news. And then I think it was because they had to like sit him down and tell him, and then they're like, oh yeah, that tweet was real. Never mind, we did part ways.
Yeah. It was not a mutual parting ways. We fired you. That is interesting. I mean, Brian Flores clearly knows how to do 2 things well. He knows how to bring this locker room together. He knows how to coordinate a defense. And I even with the loss of personnel, even with the turnover luck regressing to normal, even with a little injury luck biting them in the butt, this is still a defense that I'm going to have high confidence is in the top 10 at the end of the year, because they have no obvious holes, and the strength is where you want your strength. They have 3 sick corners. I would expect that they are a tough team to pass on. I would expect that this is a team that's going to create opportunities and turnovers regularly still. So the defense is really not something I'm thinking about or worried about at all with this squad.
And they will have co-offensive coordinators. So between him and Eric Studesville,
really? Co-offensive coordinators? Oh,
you get the running backs coach and the tight ends coach will be co-offensive coordinators. I'll dig into that a little. Although this guy went to Wisconsin Whitewater. That's a good school.
I hate that. Do not love.
If you have 2 offensive coordinators, you have no offensive coordinators.
you don't have any. Yeah. That's funny. Okay, so
we'll figure it out.
Let's move down to the kind of main event here. Tua time.
Yeah, this is you think we didn't have a strong opinion on
Tagovailoa is a very interesting case, and there will be a lot of words shed about Tua, just not on this podcast, but across all the podcast sphere. There will be a lot of ink spilled writing about Tua. There will be a lot of speculation. He was a risky choice as QB2 in the 2019 NFL draft because he was coming off a major hip injury as a young man. And in the preseason last year, which was abbreviated because of COVID and his hip surgery limiting his availability for preseason anything, he had no reps under center until it was the heart of the season. And it looked like this was going to be the Ryan Fitzpatrick show for the duration in 2019. But for whatever reason, maybe because they had as much draft capital as they did, maybe because they realized they were a little closer than they would have thought after getting a surprise win, convincing surprise win at the Niners, or being 3-3 at their bye, they inject Tua into the starting lineup. First of all, credit again to Brian Flores for managing that locker room,
doing what he needed to do, and not
just masterfully navigating, just masterfully navigating the guys in that locker room who are like, no, our best chance to win is Ryan Fitzpatrick out there. And he is like, look, it's not up to me. Tua is the future of this franchise, either the current, either the future, good or bad. He is the future, and we need to find out as soon as possible. So he is getting started. And even then, waffling in specific games like the Raiders game in a way that Fitzpatrick kept you alive for a playoff berth was pretty wild. But the Tua experience from Jump Street was not great. And yes, a ton of it was because of the situation he was in and not having any preparation. A ton of it was the offense in general was coordinated poorly under Chan Gailey. It was not dynamic. It was not interesting. It was not novel. There was no concepts that really was surprising anyone. It was just a very vanilla crap offense. But there were red flags about Tua. His throwing motion looks different than it did in Alabama before his hip injury. There are some aspects of his game that I think it is fair to question, is he ever going to be the player we thought he was when they drafted him number 5 overall? And that is looking even more ishy in hindsight with Justin Herbert doing Justin Herbert things. What is your current temperature on Tua? And are you basically entering 2021 with a completely open mind as to what his ceiling might be?
I am going to. Everything we said about Zach Wilson playing the easy schedule is the opposite. I mean, this guy came into the game the one year, won it. He played as it was a bad injury, but when he was on the field, like, he was legitimately the best player in college football at times. I mean, he
dislocated
was great.
Hip though, man.
The hip injury is worrisome, but it's been another year. He's had time to get that fully healed, fully right. He's had a whole off season now to study with the offense. He's going to get more of a preseason this year. I'm hopeful, but I won't be surprised if it's just like, oh, he's never going to be good because the injury just took that away from him. His mechanics are broken. He's not going to heal from that. And, we're going to have to move on. And I feel like the way that Flores navigated, like you said, and just put him in, even though Fitzpatrick was playing well, it was like, I don't think Flores is going to be scared to just say, well, we're done with Tua. Like, this just isn't working. Like, you have to give him enough chances. It's not going to be like week 6 and be like, he doesn't have it, we're going to cut him. There's going to be more than that. But I think in the longer game, I think Flores is pretty open-minded to, I'm not married to this kid. Brissett has started plenty of games. Like, if this team everything's clicking but him, I mean, Brissett could start some games later this year. I think that's your floor, and your ceiling is he starts to play like the prospect was lauded as. His injury isn't bothering him anymore, and the addition of Fuller and Waddle makes all the difference. So he had a really low EPA per snap. He was honestly one of the worst quarterbacks from a lot of metrics. They won games by having crazy turnover luck, short fields, and really they got a lot of production out of the running back at times. Didn't matter who it was. Like just
Myles Gaskin season.
Yeah, random running back. Here you go, and all of a sudden he's halfway. Just a screen
Salvin
pass.
Ahmed.
Salvin Ahmed. Yeah, I mean some of these. Yeah, just random running back du jour is just running wild. Like the offense was called well. I thought the defense played good, and the turnover luck obviously made things a lot easier. When you're having a bad quarterback season and your EPA per play is shit, it's going to get masked when you start a lot of your possessions at the 20, and I don't mean your 20. So I think we didn't even really get a feel for how bad Tua was at times because of all the the average starting field position felt like they were always across the 50 thanks to a punt block or an interception, and the running backs bailed them out quite a bit. So it feels like there's a low floor for this offense if it doesn't work.
Are you saying that makes you cautiously pessimistic or cautiously optimistic?
I'm a little pessimistic.
I think I'm cautiously pessimistic also.
It's kind of a bad effing injury. Like your hip, people don't understand how much hips, and maybe I shouldn't say people don't, but everyone understands how important hips are in a lot of things. Like in baseball, your hips are super important to hitting the ball, to throwing the ball. For a quarterback rotation,
right, his mechanics changed. Yeah, and honestly, there was a lot of balls down that were deep balls that he made look easy in college and was nowhere even close last year. And it's like, if your deep ball has lost that much touch and there are question marks about your mechanics to go along with that, I don't know that that's another year removed from surgery kind of thing we can get fixed. I don't know. So I think that there is real signal that is telling you that this is not going to work at the NFL level.
So and again, these are the things we don't know, and maybe we can find this out if we do some digging. Let's always go back, and I'll do this for a decade. I'll go back to the Josh Allen thing. We didn't think Josh Allen was going to be any good. Like, you know what? His fucking wind up, his motion, his decision making, the time he takes to get the ball out, his reads, just everything about him stunk except for when he took off. It's like, oh my God, he's a fullback when he's moving with the ball. He's going to knock your ass over. And we didn't know just how determined him and the coaching staff were to fixing all that. Like, if you can make incremental gains in all of the things you're doing wrong, and you have a coaching staff that's, figuring out what's wrong and fixing it, any player with the potential will get better. So it's a matter of here we are, a couple schmucks on a podcast. If we know his throwing motion and mechanics are whack, as the kids used to say, and I meant to say out of whack, and I said whack, and I feel so dumb. But his mechanics are out of whack. If Miami knows this and they're working on this in off-season programs, then his ceiling is maybe more likely to get hit. If he comes out and his mechanics look like shit right off the bat in preseason, then yeah, I'm out on this team, because he can't. It doesn't matter if you add a couple good receivers, hope your defense is just as good as last year. If your quarterback play stinks, you're going to be sitting there in week 15 with Brissett starting.
Yeah, so his completion percentage by depth is an interesting chart to break down, because he was great short of 10 yards. And then it all comes apart beyond 10 yards. And there were, even in you remember the Raiders game where he got the hook for Fitzpatrick, there were open receivers along the sidelines, 10, 20, 15 yards down the field.
The Tannehill throw.
There were open guys against the Raiders in that game, and he wasn't pulling the trigger. He was only looking for guys over the middle, deep, and when he did try to go to the sidelines, it was uncatchable. A lot of uncatchable. I can tell you flipping the script a little bit from a positive standpoint, he was extremely safe with the football. He got sacked 20 times, but he only fumbled once. He only threw 5 picks, very low interception percentage for the number of passes that he threw. But there was 2 reasons. One of them is it wasn't catchable for either his guy or the cornerback, right? that's one of the reasons a lot of his incomplete passes were not intercepted. So I'm nervous that this is not going to work out. I'm hopeful that it does, because he had moments as a college player that I still remember being especially outstanding, and I really, really hope he can return to that level. And they've given him everything he could possibly ask for to try to recreate that, at least assuming that the offensive scheme is better than last year's. You mentioned he does have the weapons now. Let's talk about the offense overall. This is a fine offensive line. There are new pieces, there are young pieces, they're not highly paid, but they're fine. Like, this is not this isn't a big blinking red light for me offensive line situation. Fuller, Parker, that's a solid 1-2 from a wide receiver standpoint. You get to put Waddle in the slot. I will criticize you for how you ended up with Waddle at the 6th overall pick, because I thought the process was poor getting there, especially when you picked San Francisco's pocket for the future, going down from 3 to 12. I think you could have gotten Waddle or Smith at that 12 spot, I think. So it was, I don't know. I thought it was not a shrewd move to trade back up, and I don't know what to really expect from Waddle. What's your opinion about this wide receiver crew?
I think he has a high ceiling. I think all the SEC receivers that ended up in this first round, I've been just amazed by some of the things they've done over the past couple of years, especially the Bama kids. So I think it works out. I don't know. I mean, you see receivers come up and they just don't get it, but when you come from a program like that, I mean, it's almost a pro program at this point down there. And I mean,
is he more of a Ruggs? Is he more of a Ruggs, or is he more of a Ridley?
See, and I think I don't know if he's big enough to be a Ridley. How big is this kid? I mean, he's decent size, right?
He's got more size than Smith. He's bigger bones.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, everybody does. Smith's size of my 9-year-old. 5'10", 183. I don't think anyone is a Ruggs. I don't think you want a Ruggs anymore. Like, that's fun, but
Ridley's 6'1", 190.
I think in this situation, and again, very Tua dependent, he could be the best. He should be the best receiver out of this class, at least this year.
Julio's 6'3", 220. You think he's going to be the best receiver out of this class, huh?
I like the connection up in Cincinnati.
You didn't see Jefferson being the best receiver out of the last class, though. I certainly didn't.
Well, no, because he had a shitty quarterback and a bad.
You think he's going to be better than Chase? You don't think Chase is the?
I just don't think that offense is going to be there yet. That's going to be a really bad offense. Chase long term, probably, but give me Waddle for this year. Devonta Smith, if the quarterbacking works out in Philly, whatever. Yeah, and Smith isn't. Well, yeah, Smith's not 183. Dan says. I'm like, yeah, he might be 150. Who? Where did the other one?
No, he's like 160, 165ish.
Kadarius Toney, the Giants. Yeah, we've had our talk about that. Honestly, Rashad Bateman, kind of a dark horse candidate to be up there, but the other LSU. What was our other LSU guy?
Marshall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some guys down the board that could play well, and we saw that last year. There were some second and third round guys that played really well, but I'm very hopeful. Actually, we talked about it just a minute ago. I'm hopeful for Elijah Moore. I'm hopeful for Rashad Bateman in Baltimore, and Kadarius Toney I'm down on. But yeah, I think if the Tua ceiling's there, he should have a really, really good year because they have the offensive line, and I think he can just slide right into the system, especially with a bit more of a veteran guy coming in across from him as well.
Okay. What do we think of this trend that's taking over the NFL in the wake of Art Smith being a successful tight end elevated to head coach, where everyone now is elevating their tight end coaches to offensive coordinator? Will that mean George Godsey is in any way, shape, or form the next Art Smith, or is this two offensive coordinator nonsense a potential problem?
When I got up today, I didn't expect to be asked, will George Godsey be the next Art Smith? That was not on the docket for today, Drew. I don't know shit about this guy.
I really don't either. It's a wild card, man.
We'll see. I think overall, coaching staff, I'm happy with the leadership. I like Flores a lot. Everybody likes Flores. I think he has if this team gets it together, it's not the easiest start to the schedule, but if this team plays well on offense, probably a playoff team, maybe, and I think a decent shot at coach of the year. So maybe, again, he rubbed off on this coaching staff and they all can make some smart decisions, but I don't know enough about how this offense is going to be called this year to really make some grand guesses on that. I'm excited. I'm excited to see if they can fix the things that were wrong with not only offense, but Tua last year. And I think bringing in Waddle and Will Fuller, I like that a ton. Bringing those two in.
How many games is Will Fuller going to miss?
Hopefully none, man. But he's an injury risk. But Parker and Gesicki, Waddle and Fuller across.
You got some redundancy overall in your wide receiver. Wide receiver room is very good.
Yes, and then again, Gaskin, Brown came in as Malcolm Brown came in as another running back. Again, they seem to be able to just throw anyone out there at running back and make it work, which is kind of how it should be, really, guys. The rest of the league should kind of pay attention to that. But I'm hopeful for this offense, and even with some defensive regression, I think this team can be a good team. I have them as hopefully, and again, this is maybe hopeful. I think they could be like a middle of the pack offense. I think that's their ceiling. I'm not sure where you have that. I probably have them. I'd have to double check here. Probably 18 to 20 for an offense. And with the ceiling around that 14, 15, if everything works out with Tua and the addition of but again, it's a top 10 defense. So this team, if the offense hits the ceiling, it's a playoff team. If not, it's probably a middling team who's drafting somewhere in the middle again.
Yeah, right. And still asking questions about maybe Tua is not the guy.
Yeah, and hopefully Flores makes a snap judgment on that. Decides at some point.
Boy, man.
And somebody says, who's calling the plays? That is a hell of a question. Why don't we pull the schedule up, and I will see if I can figure out that from the local newspaper.
Okay. I'll give you my 2 cents on the schedule here off the top while you run down who's calling the plays. I've asked a couple people.
Neither of these men have ever called plays in the NFL.
That's right. And I've asked people who should know, and they don't. So it may just be an unknown overall.
Article from March. They won't say.
They won't say it. Right. Yeah. Cool, guys. The Miami schedule overall is very, very challenging. It's front loaded from a difficulty standpoint, which is always bad. I'd rather have my tough opponents late in the schedule than early. And the reason is you don't even know if they're going to be tough late. But if it's early, they're probably going to be at full strength. It's probably going to be fully healthy. You got to host Buffalo early in the season, which is good from hey, you get to put them in the heat. That might neutralize the disadvantage a little bit. But you struggled against the Buffalo Bills last time. Especially the last game of the season, you struggled against that team. Similarly, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you had to head up the Sunshine State to play Tampa early in the season. That's not great. You got to go to London. That's difficult. Long trip from Miami to London. What's that?
Patrick says, "Yikes! Week 6 through 8." Yeah, I know it's Jacksonville, and maybe by week 6. They've got things figured out a little bit, bringing in a rookie quarterback. It's still not going to be a great team, but it's still a trip to London, followed by 2 straight games with teams off their bye.
8-hour flight.
And the second of which being Buffalo at Buffalo off their bye.
A game that probably clinches the division for your opponent.
A team they greatly struggled at, again, with a very good defense. They very much struggled to stop that team from scoring last year. in the late in the season. So that's a rough patch there. And we've said this once in a different preview, and we'll say it again. You got to get right spot. There's Houston and Taylor coming to town, and you are a big favorite there before going into another tough spot. And then there is a bit of a respite.
Yeah. But really this stretch, number one, going to London and not taking your bye after, we covered that on the scheduled podcast. That is one of the bigger franchise defining mistakes that I could identify.
I know. I wonder who makes that decision.
I don't know.
The leadership, general manager, leadership group in general. I'm not sure who decides that.
President of football operations is the final call
there.
That
sounds right. I think so.
But it was a poor decision. And your reward is you got to host Atlanta that next week. Atlanta is coming off of their bye. That's not a great spot for you of Miami. And then that Buffalo game week 8. This realistically, I think it is fair to assume you win one of your coin flip games between New England and Indy, and that you beat the Raiders. And then other than that, not a lot of wins on this first half of the schedule. You probably heading into that week 9 game against Houston as a 3-win team, maybe 4.
The best case scenario going early in the season is whatever the right decision for the quarterback position for New England they don't make. The Raiders truly regress like we think. Indy is not getting what they need out of Wentz. Jacksonville is just as bad at traveling as you. You beat them so badly that the trip back to Atlanta isn't so bad because you got to rest your starters in the fourth quarter. And then, you probably still get the shit kicked out of you up in Buffalo.
Best
there's
case
some
scenario.
There's some coin flips that don't go your way.
5-3.
Yeah, there's some coin flips and you're 3-5, or it could get worse again if the things don't click on offense. Getting through that second half stretch after the Baltimore game, you can pick up some wins. New Orleans and Tennessee are, you're about a field goal dog there late on the road. And again, it's a bit of a pickle there. It is not only what are we calling it? The mega awesome awful hammer. We need a name for this.
The mega hammer.
Yeah.
The Dong
Tennessee
Hammer 69.
Game. Yeah, the Dong Hammer 69 game. Against Tennessee week 17 at Tennessee, by the way.
Yeah.
You were on not only facing a team who's off a Thursday night game, you're off a Monday night game. So the double rest spot thing, plus it's the second week of a back-to-back road game for you, as you've played New Orleans the week before. And the week before, oh man, at least you're coming off a bye going to the Jets. You need that Jets game so bad because those next 2 weeks, those are opponents that we're projecting to take a step back this year.
Yeah.
But that's still such a tough spot for you. And then you get New England to close the season. New England, doesn't matter if they're good or bad. Seems like those games are always close. I don't know.
Always close. Always. Okay. So realistically, from a betting standpoint, the best case scenario is they stick with Tua. They don't quit on him. The defense and the injury luck impacts them more in the first half of the season than the last half of the season. And when you start this stretch from week 11 to week 15, where they play the Jets twice and they have 4 weeks in a row of staying home, there'll potentially be some buy low value on Miami during that stretch. Does that seem fair? That seems like a best case scenario for us as the bettors.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot, especially you hope Buffalo beats them by 40 points.
That would be.
You hope
awesome.
The Tampa game, that especially maybe the Tampa game, they get the tar beat out of them too. There's going to be some buy low spots. You hope they don't cover
against the Texans. Yeah, you hope that Buffalo beats the tar out of them and that they don't cover against the Texans.
Beat the Texans by 3 close late game,
yes.
Similar to that Raiders game where it's a clearly inferior team and it takes everything they can to win by 1. Baltimore goes about how it should. Maybe the defense stifles and Baltimore's offense is better this year, and then you get them well, it depends what the Jets are doing at that point of the year.
You can get a lot of coin flippy type of lines in some games where they're the better team from week 11 to week 15.
The weirdest part about Houston now too is the fact that today we're finding out it might not be how long is Deshaun suspended. it might be like Tyrod starting anyway because Deshaun's on a different team. Like if they're going to try to move him, I don't know if you bring someone else in with none of that, the cap space being what it is, where the franchise is in general. I think you just if you trade Watson and you don't get a quarterback back for him, you just go with Tyrod the whole year, I suppose.
I think
he's semi-serviceable at times, but he's not going to win you a lot of games. So that might not be a game where we get like, oh, they beat him close. It's like, no, it was Tyrod Taylor. They won by a lot. Sorry about your little plan. Houston should be very interesting seeing how this goes over the next few weeks if they do move him or not.
Yep.
I mean, they're asking a lot. And just a sidebar on that, there's so much we don't know about what goes on behind closed doors between front offices. I feel like anybody who's talking to Houston right now probably is privy. They're probably signing an NDA and they know what's going to happen to, Deshaun Watson for, as far as whatever settlement or whatever, whatever's going to happen behind closed doors as far as that goes. So it'll be very interesting to see over the next few weeks.
It is pretty cool, at least for their schedule. And I want to point this out that you do have from week 9 to week 15. That is a 7-week stretch where you only travel once and you get extra rest on top of that. And it's at New York. Not a tough travel.
Trip up the coast. Head up to the coast. Have some fun.
Yeah, of course. So that's a pretty nice 7-week stretch where you're really going to be able to kind of, get your legs back under you if the beginning of the season doesn't go as we expect. What do you think of that line between Miami and New England week 1, by the way? That makes sense to you?
We don't know who the New England starter is. We don't know a few things about New England. It's probably, I'd have it at 2, I guess.
So right now the market makes these two teams, New England and Miami, almost dead even in terms of power number. They are both minus a half point relative to an average NFL team. They are both in the same direction. They're both 20 and 21st offensively, 10th and 13th defensively. So this is like, these are really, really, really similar teams, and they're giving New England 2.5 points of home field advantage week 1 of the season, which is
that's where I said 2 because that's about what my home field would be for Gillette.
Yeah.
I mean, 1.8 ish, round up to 2. So it's close, but I think it's
not enough to get involved.
No, it's a half point too much, but I'm not betting.
What do you think that closes? No way that moves to 3, right?
Which way do you think it moves based on quarterback decision?
Probably pick.
Do you think the market would be excited about a rookie quarterback over Cam?
No.
I think once they make the quarterback decision, it goes Miami's way either way, no matter who they pick.
You're right. There's really no. There's a
it's
low,
negative news both ways.
There's a low probability that Cam plays a quarter of preseason football and kicks ass, and everyone's like, "Oh, he's back." Was that 5% chance?
Yeah, I'm not putting that.
We're not seeing a 3. We're not going to get a 3.
No, and a couple people in the chat already said, like, yeah, Miami is a teaser leg. Yeah, if it settles at 1, if it says it settles at 1.5, 2, 2.5, right in that cute little teaser zone. Yeah, I'm kind of a cagey. You can tell I just did Euro 2020 for a month. A little cagey match. Start off the bat early fixture and the two teams that are looking to be similar spots in the table this year.
That total has been bet down from 46 to 45.5. One of the lower totals on the board week 1. So another good reason.
All right, let's take a look at the odds and close the page on close the book on this squad, and we'll get to the other two teams later this week.
Super Bowl 25-1. That's not very high. What?
I'm sure if you shop around, you can find some. It feels like teams that are in the 25 to 50 range. You shop around, it's like they're 25 at one book, 40 at another. So Either of those numbers I'm not betting.
That's not bettable at all.
Well, no.
FC 16-1, unbettable. AFC East plus 350, unbettable. To make the playoffs, yes, plus 115. As we kind of laid out, I think you're better off waiting to pull the trigger on these guys until they get through the nasty part of their schedule early on. Any bet that you want to make that the Dolphins are going to be a positive surprise, I think you wait till after that Week 8 game against Buffalo. Just hold your damn horses.
To make the playoffs after that, especially if it's like
you'll get 3 or 4 to 1.
3 to 1,
yeah,
4 to 1, something like
that'll
that.
Be a big old number.
You get a nice number like that later after that tough stretch when they get into the easier part of the year. Yeah, fine with that. Like, especially, 4 to 1 would be pretty sweet. Especially it's not the softest of landings, but a bunch of winnable games late, and they could get to 11 wins, get themselves a
regular
spot.
Season win total 9.5 plus 125 to the over, minus 160 to the under. If you recall from the last schedule we were just looking at, the implied wins on their schedule is only 8. And this is a team that power rated a little bit worse than average. So 8 and 9 is kind of the expectation. 9.5 is awfully damn high. What is up with that?
I don't know, bookmaker has them 34 to 1. So I mean, it's not a massive difference in the markets, but and even that, that's not bettable. I'm not, especially again in a tough AFC, not excited about that at all. So
Tua, if he is good in his first ever playoff run, no, come on, stop.
Yeah, rookie quarterback starting in the playoffs. Like, we'll bet him at 4 to 1 to make the playoffs, and then we'll hammer the Browns minus 7.5 in Cleveland to beat them. We got to clip this part when this happens. Like, I'll remember this spot right there. Matt clipped this.
I love that. So, that's a great
call. Nothing probably preseason. Again, if I had to bet it, I might be betting the regular season win total under because you get to that halfway point in the season, you can kind of buy out with some other ways, or you can just sit and be like, no, this team just doesn't have it. Like, we're going to get to 8 or 9 wins here, and that's that. So let me look if I can see. Oh, I don't have win totals. I have to win the division. Yeah, plus 378 here. Regular season wins is going to be right around that same spot. 9.5 juice to the under at Chris, minus 160 to the under. So the market is pretty much in lockstep on that, and I'm not all that excited about getting involved.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I wish there were more bettable bets. I don't
more bettable bets.
I wish Waddle all the success in the world, and I predicted him to be good, but with 2 quarterbacks that are going to be starting from day one, possibly more with Fields, with Lance, with Mac. There's too many quarterbacks that have a chance to see a lot of field for a receiver. A receiver would have to have a Randy Moss type year, I think, this year to overcome that many quarterbacks that are going to see probable time. So I can't get a rookie of the year involvement with him either.
I agree with you. Good luck. Good call. Let's
reconvene Wednesday.
Yeah, let's you got or let's talk about that off the air.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. All right. Best of luck handicapping whatever you're doing in the sports world. Swimming, Olympics not going great so far. We're gonna need a little luck here. Need a little luck here. Gonna need French judo team. Anytime you feel like showing up, please. Anytime. We could use some dubs that are not Japan in the judo. Anytime. All right, let's wrap this up. Good work, and I'll talk to you next time.